Hello and welcome to Tech Deals, part 4 of the Ryzen 7 1700 computer build video series. Sort of. If you are a long-time viewer, welcome back. If you are new, give me a minute to explain why this is on my desk and why there is a 9-month gap between part 3 and part 4 of this video. The short version is, I love Ryzen. This became my daily driver. I started using it and I never looked back, which is why nothing else on this video series ever got posted. Now, this computer has recently been replaced by my Skylake X high-end enthusiast desktop system, which is currently under the desk now. But not to worry, this isn't going away. It's getting a new lease on life downstairs as a dedicated benchmark and video capture machine. Now, this video is not going to be part of a traditional build video series. I'm not doing anything specific in this video other than to talk about my experiences of using this computer for 9 months as a daily machine. I have done my 4K video rendering and editing on YouTube on this machine. I've played games on it. It has been my daily driver for 9 months, and it will continue to be used on a daily basis, just in a new position downstairs. Now, this is a premium machine built with premium parts, and I'll cover those in a few minutes because I'm sure many of my current viewers were not around in March when I originally did this video series. However, a link to the full playlist will be in the description below if you're interested in seeing it. For those of you curious, those videos were recorded less than 2 weeks after I moved home from my office going to YouTube full time, so while they're filmed here, it looks a little different and sounds a little different because I was very early in the days of moving my filming home from my former office. Now, a lot has changed in the computer industry since March when Ryzen 7 launched, and I'll talk about that and the progression of Ryzen in this video. But since that happened, Skylake X launched and Coffee Lake launched, and I'll talk about the positioning of Ryzen 7 compared to those just a little bit. But I mostly want to focus on this machine and talk about why Ryzen 7 and Ryzen 5, which didn't exist when I built this, are still both the deals or value for the money for most people. A quick recap of what's in this computer because a few things have been changed since I originally built this machine. Ryzen 7 1700 8-core 16-thread CPU, ASUS Crosshair 6 Hero motherboard, 240mm all-in-one liquid cooler, that's from Cooler Master, the Master Liquid. We have 32GB of G.Skill Ripjaws 5 DDR4 3000 RAM, because it's on Ryzen, it's running at 2933. We have the Cooler Master Master Maker 5T mid-tower case with dual tempered side glass panels. We have the Cooler Master V850 80 plus gold 850 watt power supply. We have 3 solid state drives in here, a 256 gig NVMe SX8000 boot drive from ADATA, a 500 gig Samsung 850 EVO data drive, and a new Crucial MX300 525 gig SSD. There was a hard drive in the build originally, that has been removed. And then finally we have the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme GTX 1080 Ti. You can see that right there. It is a wonderful, wonderful graphics card, utterly silent. Some parts of this build would actually be less expensive to do today than they were when I first put it together, but others are more expensive. The SSD prices and the RAM prices are higher today in December of 2017 than they were back in March. This case, however, is much less expensive. On the day I was filming it, it was $165 after mail-in rebate on Amazon. Don't expect that price to last very long, but at least it's there for a few days after I film this. That is a really good price for this case, and at that price, I give this case 2.5 thumbs up. It is very well built, excellent cable management. It's beautiful with the frosted tempered glass side panels on the side. It's actually very, very nice. My main complaint with it when I did the original review and the original build was it's very nice, it's just very expensive. At $165, my cost complaint largely goes away. As built, this computer is currently nearly $2,500. $2,500 justifies a $165 case all day long. Please do not put a $2,000+ computer in an $80 case. That's almost a crime. Having said that, while I'm very happy with the case, there are some changes that I would make if I were building this today. If you're watching this video in December of 2017 or maybe even January going, well, I'm interested, but what would you change? First of all, for a machine of this caliber, the Ryzen 7 1700X or possibly even the 1800X would have been justified. I should have put the 1700X in here. I have never gotten either of my Ryzen 7 1700 CPUs stable at 4 GHz on any kind of cooling on any board. Let me clarify that statement because I'm sure some people are going to go, wait a minute, you've got great cooling, what's the problem? It's not a cooling issue. This CPU barely gets over 60 degrees on full load. That 240mm liquid cooler has no problem keeping that CPU cool. It is completely stable at 3.8 gigahertz and mostly stable at 3.9, although I have had the machine blue screen on me at 3.9. Voltage makes no difference. 1.35, 1.4, 1.45. The CPU simply doesn't want to run that fast. Now, my other Ryzen 7 1700 CPU will do 3.9 stable. It will not do 4.0. My 1700X and my 1800X are both rock solid stable at 4.0 gigahertz. Now, the main difference between those two CPUs is my 1700X requires 1.4 volts to do 4.0 gigahertz. My 1800X does 4.0 at stock voltage. It is more expensive, but if you don't want to mess around with voltage, you want to get 4 gigahertz, you're much more likely to do it with an 1800X. But if you're willing to play with voltage settings in the BIOS, most 1700Xs should, at some reasonable voltage setting, hit 4.0. The next change I'd make is the motherboard. Now, this is a very nice motherboard. It works great, no problems, but to be honest, it's expensive for no real reason that I can find. It does not overclock better than the less expensive boards. You can see in front of me, I have an Asus ROG Strix B350-F, $110 after mail-in rebate on the day I filmed this video. That board is currently $230. It's double the money. For what? Okay, it has SLI and proper crossfire support. Great. I don't recommend those anyway, but putting that issue aside, it doesn't overclock faster. It does not have more M.2 slots for more NVMe drives. It's, yeah, I'm not actually sure why it's more expensive. So, would not buy again, as nice as it is. Now, if you don't want a B350 for whatever reason, you can get the X370 Prime Pro from Asus. If you want RGB, if you want something gorgeous in this beautiful case, because when you I'll put it on in a minute, but the tempered glass, the frost on here is gorgeous with the lights. Get a board such as the K7 from Gigabyte. It has RGB for days. It is just under $200, but it's got some really nice features on it. Or you could get the K5 for a slightly reduced priced and slightly reduced RGB. But the K7, if you're going to do this, why not? And if you go with MSI, take a look at their gaming carbon boards. Between $130 to $150, depending upon the model and the rebates they're offering. Those are perfectly fine, and they'll get you nice overclocks as well for a whole lot less money than this nice but kind of expensive board. I want to back up to the CPU for a second. If you want to buy a Ryzen 7 1700, skip the liquid cooler. It doesn't add anything. The Ryzen 7 1700 comes with the Wraithspire RGB stock cooler. It's a 95 watt TDP cooler. It does the job just fine. It'll run a Ryzen 7 1700 at 3.7 gigahertz with no issues whatsoever. You can completely save the cost and trouble of installing a liquid cooler if you're not going to buy the X chip. That brings us to storage. What would I do with storage with this if I had it to do all over again? The single biggest decision that I would make differently is the boot SSD on the NVMe port would be a 500 gig drive. One of the biggest limitations I ran into was trying to work with a 256 gigabyte boot drive. Too many things in video content creation use temp files and things get saved to the C drive, and yes, you can remap, and yes, you can install things to the other SSD, but I constantly found my C drive running up to 80 to 85% full. All SSDs start to slow down when they become full, so you don't want to fill them up much beyond about 80 to 85% if you want to keep them at full speed. And for my use for 4K video editing, for daily content creation, that was not nearly large enough. Now, when you go to the larger sizes, the SX8000 that's in there, which is a very nice MLC drive rather than TLC drive, so it's got great write endurance, it'll last basically forever, is just over $200. The Samsung 960 EVO 500 gig drive is about $40 more expensive, and it's slightly smaller, 512 gigs versus 500. That being said, if you are building a $2,500 machine, the $40 price difference is not a big deal, or it shouldn't be. And as I noted in my Which NVMe Should You Buy video a couple of months ago, when it comes to NVMe drives, you have the Samsung 960 EVO, and you have the Samsung 960 EVO, and then you have everything else. Now, that doesn't mean the other drives are slow. I also tested the Western Digital Black. I've got a Kingston drive. I've got a few other NVMe drives since I did that video. Nothing touches the Samsung 960s right now. They are incredibly quick. If you're spending $2,000+ on your computer, spend the $40. get a Samsung 960 EVO or a 960 Pro if you really need the write endurance and you want sustained writes beyond the SLC cache buffer. But most people are fine with an EVO. The Pro is only for, shall we say, Pro users. I do have a Pro, by the way, in my Skylake X machine, but that's a $4,000+ computer. So again, the Pro drive is the only one to go with there. Interestingly enough, when we move down to the SATA SSDs for my additional storage, it basically then doesn't matter what you buy based upon price. The ADATA SU800, the Samsung 850 EVO, the Crucial MX300, the SanDisk Ultra 2, the Western Digital Blue, they're all basically the same performance. I mean, they're plus or minus 10%. You'll never notice it. I don't notice it. If you put these blind into different machines, I don't think I could pick them apart. So when it comes to these sorts of drives, buy based upon how many dollars per gigabyte that you spend, and don't worry about the rest of it too much because performance, longevity, endurance, warranty are all very, very similar between these drives. And as far as I'm concerned, they're largely interchangeable. Buy based on price. What about graphics card? Now, when it comes to graphics card, if you're building a $2,500 machine, a 1080 Ti is the only choice you have in December of 2017. Should you buy the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme 1080 Ti? Sure, if you like the Gigabyte Aorus branding. What about the MSI Gaming X? Yes, if you like the Gaming X branding. What about the For the Win 3 or the Superclock 2? Yes, if you like. It doesn't make any difference. Buy whichever 1080 Ti you like. From a price to performance point of view, generally whichever one is the least expensive, minus a couple of models, is the one you should buy. For example, I would skip the MSI Armor, for example, but the Duke is a good card. I have one of those. The Gaming X, the Gaming X Trio. I would skip the blower style cards unless you don't have a case like this. If you have a small case, maybe for whatever reason you put together a mini ITX or a micro ATX board case and you don't have a lot of airflow, sure. But otherwise, get a dual or triple fan large open air cooler, and at that point it becomes about aesthetics. I recently did a review of the MSI Gaming X Trio, which is an $800 card, big, fancy, flashy. It's about $70 more expensive than the Duke, for example. Is it faster than the Duke? Yeah, by 50 megahertz, it doesn't make any difference. Is it cooler than the Duke? Yes, by a few degrees. Is it quieter than the Duke? Maybe a sound measuring device would tell the difference. It's virtually indistinguishable. If I swapped out a Duke for a Gaming X Trio, you'd never notice the difference. If I swapped out that Gigabyte Aorus Extreme for the standard Gigabyte triple fan card that costs a lot less expensive, would you really notice? No, you wouldn't. However, you would notice the difference to your pocketbook. The question is, do you want the big, flashy, fancy card that just has a wow factor written all over it, or do you want the best price to performance? Then it just becomes a personal choice. This does provide me an opportunity to show you something about these big, heavy cards, and one of the things I didn't appreciate at the time about the Mastermaker 5T case. Take a look at how thick, that's a 2.5 slot thick card. It is heavy. Now, I added the VGA support bracket that this case comes with. Most cases do not come with it, but it's holding this card level at the moment. It spent 9 months of its life not being held level. I installed this like 3 hours before I started filming this video. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out of the way and I want you to watch the card move. Notice how it came down and sagged. I'm going to put it back and lift that up. Notice that it holds the weight of the card. I'm going to let it sag back down again. And now, it's not major. And it has in fact been running fine for 9 months. So if you don't have a VGA support bracket, you're probably fine. 2 years? 3 years? It is a heavy, heavy card. I'm actually going to leave that VGA support bracket in place. I've never used a VGA support bracket before. I've seen some videos done by Jay's 2 Cents and some other channels, and I kind of looked at them and went, nah, does it really matter? Well, you be the judge. I'm impressed by how much it actually lifts that card up and holds it horizontal. I tweeted out some before and after pictures on Twitter and got a bunch of responses from that. Link to my Twitter down in the video description below. But if you don't want your card sagging and putting all that stress on your motherboard, that's a nice feature of this case. I have now turned the system on so you can see the new red LED light strips that I've installed. This case comes with one light strip right down here. I've added 2 more. There are 2 light strips in each box. They come in multiple colors. They come in blue, white, red, etc. They also make an RGB version of this. Unlike the light strings that you have to actually lay out and maybe tape inside, these are light bars and they're magnetic. They simply come right off the case, just like so. And because it's hard, you don't have to worry about it being straight. Anywhere in the case that's metal, they'll simply snap right on, or you could always use double-sided tape or something else to put them on. The same thing is true as this one down here. It's also magnetic, and you just lift it up. It sits down. There we go. And I've got one on the top. Now, the lights are on, of course. I'm going to turn them off in just a second. And I'm also going to put the frosted tempered glass on as well, because it's going to look very different with the glass on than with the glass off. I have now turned the lights off. The only light on my face is from actually the computer monitor off screen, lighting up half of my face. But otherwise, all the lights in the room are off. The frosted tempered glass panel is installed, which is why the color is not as red as it was before, which of course you're going to run the computer with the panel on most likely, so you're going to see it frosted that way. Now I don't have any RGB RAM in, and I'm not doing anything with the motherboard. If you had, for example, the Gigabyte K7, you could do a lot more with RGB if you wanted to, and of course if you had the RGB strips. But if you simply want to add some more lighting to your case, put in some accent lighting, for $20 you can get yourself a pair of strips that simply give you 3 nice red LED light strips for the case. And now you can see what the system looks like with the 3 red LED light strips turned off. You can see it's completely muted. There's just a couple of lights inside from the motherboard. And then, of course, the RGB lighting on the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme itself, which is also software configurable. That can be turned off if you don't want that, or perhaps you have a different card. Now, the system does come with 1 red LED strip. And if I turn that on, this is what it looks like. So this is how the case actually comes. You can set it to be always on, the way you're looking at right now. You can set it to be always off, the way it was, or we can press the strip one more time, and it does this. It cycles on and off. Why you would want that on or under your desk, I don't know, but hey, if you want it, there it is. And now the lights are turned back on, but I left the tempered glass side panel on so you could see what it looks like. You can also see the reflection of my lights and my microphone stand, which is why I had the cover off for most of this video. Please note, of course, that you're not going to have studio lighting the way I do. Your system's going to be on or under your desk, and it's not going to have light shining directly at it the way I do here. Now, there is a fan controller on the front of this case. The microphone is right here. So it's right next to this. I'm going to be silent for a second and let you listen. It's currently running in high. I'm going to switch it to low and let the microphone record directly over the machine. So that's high. That's low. That's changing the speed of the fans in the system. Back to high. Can you hear a difference? Now the microphone is about maybe 8 inches away from the computer. It's an overhead boom microphone that's only offset about 4 inches from the computer. It's very quiet. It is not inaudible because we have intake fans, exhaust fans, a liquid cooler on the top. It simply is not going to be completely silent, but it is pretty quiet. Less so here on my desk, but when it was under my machine, it wasn't an issue at all. Okay, enough about this computer. A quick look at Ryzen 5 1600X and non-X, Ryzen 7 1700X and non-X, versus the Coffee Lake options, versus Skylake X options, versus what's coming in 2018 with Ryzen Refresh. A lot of people call it Zen 2. It isn't Zen 2. That's coming 2019. But there is a Ryzen Refresh coming in the spring. And then Cannonlake, the Coffee Lake Refresh, is also coming in the spring. First, let me get the elephant in the room out of the way up front. Would I build a new Ryzen 7 anything today in December of 2017? For 98% of you, no, I would not. It is a great value for the money, but I wouldn't. The only people who should put together a Ryzen 7 machine today at this point, in my opinion, are content creators who simply cannot afford to step up to Skylake X, people who primarily do multitasking, virtual machines, software development, and other non-gaming tasks, and for whatever reason can't afford the high-end desktop platform or don't want to. If gaming is your primary interest and 60 to 100 frames per second is all you expect out of your computer, a Ryzen 5 1600 using the included Wraithspire cooler on a $100 B350 motherboard is all you need at 3.7 gigahertz. That will play all current games with an appropriate graphics card, which is a separate conversation, at 60 to 100 frames per second without any issue whatsoever. If you want more performance than that, it's not Ryzen 7, it's Coffee Lake. The i7 8700K is dramatically faster in gaming than the Ryzen 7 CPUs. I've got a video on my channel with 40 benchmarks showing that. The short answer is, even in cases that favor the Ryzen chip, the reality is the Ryzen 7 1700 only matches the 8700K stock for stock and overclock for overclock. But in most other situations, the Coffee Lake CPU is faster in all respects. Now, it does cost more. I appreciate that. You're going to spend $400 for the CPU and $150 for the motherboard. Fair enough. $300 for the CPU and $150 for the motherboard. But for $100 more, you get up to 40% more performance. Real performance, not just like maybe in a benchmark. We're talking dramatically large performance differences in games and general day-to-day use. Now, please do not misunderstand me. Ryzen is an incredible value for the money. But now, I think Ryzen 5 1600 is the deal. It's $100 less expensive, and very few people today actually need an 8-core CPU. Now, it is true that the 8-core CPU will probably last longer. You'll get maybe another year or 2 years of use out of it versus the 6-core, as everything just goes N cores in the future. But the lower clock speed may very well hold you back 5 years from now. I generally gave the advice that the Ryzen 7 made sense before Coffee Lake launched. Now that Coffee Lake is launched, if you're building any kind of premium machine, just get an 8700K. I know it costs more. It really is faster. But if you are gaming and you are looking for the deal, if you're looking for the value for your money, it's not Coffee Lake. It's Ryzen 5 1600 all day long. Now, inevitably, somebody's going to ask about the i5K chip, the 8600K. Skip it. I will do a build and I will do a detailed look at it, but the short answer is skip it. It's not worth the bother. You either buy Ryzen or you buy top-of-the-line Coffee Lake. There's really no in-between there. Now, Skylake X is a completely different beast, and I've got a whole build video on Skylake X on my channel. I have a detailed Y vlog on that, so I'm not going to repeat it all. But here's the short version. I replaced this very capable, very nice Ryzen 7 machine with a Skylake X 8-core 16-thread machine. Why? Performance was not really why. It is faster. My Skylake X machine is about 25% faster in H.264 Premiere Pro encoding than this Ryzen 7 machine is. But that's not the reason I did it. Encoding speed is not the limitation to making videos. Sitting here and filming them and writing them and editing them is what takes all of the time. It's the PCI Express lanes. It's the quad channel RAM. It's the better multitasking performance. It's the 64 gigs of RAM support, which actually this supports 64 gigs of RAM, but you gotta have 4 16 gig DIMMs, which I don't have, but I do have 8 gigabyte DIMMs, which is what's currently in my Skylake X system. I have 3 NVMe solid state drives in there. You can't really put 3 NVMe drives into any of the Ryzen. It doesn't have enough PCI Express lanes, but I do in my Skylake X system. Currently, right now, an 8-core 16-thread Skylake X will cost you $300 more than a Ryzen 7 1700X will. Now, $300 is a decent amount of money, but at 25% more speed, if you're already spending this kind of money on a machine, that's actually pretty reasonable. If you're spending $2,500 on a computer and non-gaming is your task, put an i7 7820X for $300 more in. Not only do you get faster performance, you get more PCI Express lanes. You can put more NVMe drives in. You can put more devices expansion. You got quad channel RAM, better multitasking performance. So Ryzen 7 is kind of in an odd spot at the moment. For non-gaming users who don't want to spend that extra $300, maybe you're building a $1,500 machine instead of a $2,500 machine, fair enough. Ryzen 7 is still worth considering. But if you're spending $2,500 on a machine, frankly, it's Skylake X or bust. If you're just gaming, buy a Ryzen 5 1600, the deal all day long. Quick note, unless you are absolutely building a budget machine, which is way outside the purview of what we're discussing here, don't buy anything less than a 1600. 4-core CPUs are yesterday's technology, and the whole world is moving past it. In about 18 months from now, Intel is very likely to have 8-core 16-thread consumer desktop chips out. That's going to be the new standard. 4-core is going to be very, very entry-level. So Ryzen 5 1600X is the minimum that I would build a new machine in, unless you're really doing budget. Quick note on Ryzen refresh coming next year. That is coming about 4 months from now. If you can wait, if you don't need to build something, sure, wait. It'll be a couple hundred megahertz faster. We'll get a board refresh. There'll be some minor refinements to it. It is not Zen 2. A lot of people are thinking, oh, great, this will be the Coffee Lake killer. It'll be 50% faster. No, it won't. This is not the big shrink to 7 nanometers. That is coming about 18 months from now, probably spring of 2019. That will be impressive when it comes, except when it does, Intel will have launched Ice Lake, which is the Coffee Lake replacement. Of course, that's 18 months from now, which is an eternity in the computer business. But if you can wait 4 months, yes, you'll get a little bit more for your money. You'll get a nice refresh. But if you need a computer today, if you're ready to build or buy, if your current machine is not meeting your needs and you want something faster, a Ryzen 5 1600 is a great choice today. They're discounted. The motherboards are discounted. You'll get many, many years of use out of it without a problem. The same thing is true of Coffee Lake, by the way. Cannonlake is coming next year. It is a refresh of Coffee Lake. It's not going to be a huge deal. It'll be nice. But if you're ready to buy or build today, an i7 8700K is an incredibly fast CPU. Ice Lake is the true replacement for it, and that is also probably 18 months out. That's the 10 nanometer shrink. That's probably, we don't know this for sure, going to be 8 cores, 16 threads on the consumer side, which is really where everything's going, is many cores. So if you can wait a year and a half, that's fine. Just keep in mind that for the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be getting some type of new CPU launch every 6 months. If you're sitting around going, oh man, there's something coming in 4 months, I'll wait. Great. When Ryzen refresh comes in the spring, you're just going to be asking the question, do I buy this or do I wait for Cannonlake? When Cannonlake comes, you're just going to be saying, do I buy this or wait for Ryzen 2? And then you're going to be saying, do I wait for Ice Lake? By the way, Tiger Lake is already the known code name for Ice Lake's refresh. And then Zen 3 is being worked on for 2020. So buy when you're ready. If you're waiting for the next big thing, you're always going to be waiting. But we are about 4 months away for those who are curious for the Ryzen refresh. Small bump in clock speed, probably small bump in RAM support. Thank you so much for watching this much delayed part 4 of the Ryzen 7 1700 computer build video series. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you loved it. Remember to subscribe to my channel with that big huge red button directly below. Questions and comments in the comment section, and as always, please check out the links in the video description. Those are affiliate links. They do support the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it if you can use those when you're shopping. This build as it sits will be down in the video description, and an alternative less expensive build will be down there as well. Please take a look at that. Now, I've done an i7 8700K build on my channel. I've done Ryzen 5 1600 builds, and I've done Skylake X. Please take a look at my other build videos if you're interested in building one of those machines. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.